Hey everybody, welcome back to the Quest for the Bestest. It's the podcast from Backlog Banter where we are trying to figure out what we think is the very best picture winner of all time and also sort out where everything that isn't the very top lies in a great big list of all the best picture winners ranked. If you want to check out the list, go ahead, head over to our letterbox page. Is Backlog Banter over there. I'm Timo, joined of course this week by Tucker, Tanner, and Abram. And while Abram is not in his normal spot, I'm back home. And Abram is actually hanging
They're
out
actually
with
above me.
Tucker and Tanner.
That's true.
Hey, down there!
And-
Keep it quiet down there.
Wow. So, but we are having a great time. We're back in it. We took a little 2-week break, finish up our travels. We are back in the swing of things. This week, we're going to be talking about Driving Miss Daisy from 1989, directed by Bruce Beresford, starring Morgan Freeman, Jessica Tandy, and Dan Aykroyd mainly. I'm excited to hear what you guys think about this film and maybe get some little sprinkles of extra things to think about. But before we do any talking or any driving for that matter, we got to go do our little housekeeping, of course. Last time, not quite last week, we talked about Gladiator with Russell Crowe, the Ridley Scott movie, direct from 2000. We gave it an average score of 7.8, and I recommend you go listen back to that episode so that you can figure out why we did that. Maybe I'll have to do that too. It was a little while ago. But the film ended up at number 42 on our list. So the 42nd place out of, well, it's very many, but at the end of this episode, there'll be 74 movies on that great list. So, wow, that's a lot. Now, let's go back a little bit into the past with our featured comment. Who has it for this week? It's Tucker, right?
All right, so we've got a comment this week from, I would say, who is the new up-and-coming Quest commenter, one James Harper, who ended up commenting on 5, I think, different Quest videos over the course of the last 2 weeks when we were taking our break, and he leaves a comment on our Tom Jones episode, which is ancient by today's standards. But he says, I love this movie. A critical and box office success. It was nominated for 10 Oscars, winning 4. I'm glad one of you brought up the point of when you watch an older movie, it needs to be looked at in the context of the time it was made and its cultural impact. Yes, it was a body sex comedy. One of my favorite lines in the movie is Hugh Griffith asking, "Where's Tom's pussy?" "Here, puss, plus puss." And the lusty eating scene. It has moments of great comedy and is funny, but I don't think of it as the funniest movie ever. I'm glad he enjoyed it because if you go back and watch that review, none of us agreed with it.
No,
that's okay.
Guess what? I also don't think it's the funniest movie ever.
I also, you know what, Tucker? I'm sorry. We can't. The new up and comer can't be a Tom Jones fan. I'm sorry. I don't know about this. He does not have my blessing.
Well, he's also the Apartment fan, as he commented on another one. So that's way more.
Well, Abram's not going to like that either.
Oh.
But thank you. We really do appreciate everybody who comments.
Absolutely.
It really makes the conversation a bit fuller. So even if I don't agree with your opinions, I'll let it slide. Especially because we were gone for 2 weeks. Yeah. No good comments on The Gladiator. No. So let's fix that this week. Let's fix it.
That must mean it's a bad movie, of course.
Oh, Lord. As Tanner would have us believe during that episode. Okay. Well, should we talk about Driving Miss Daisy? Enough tooting around the horn. How about? Let's.
Oh God, how many car jokes are we gonna have today?
Yeah.
Let's slip into the driver's seat. All 4 of us hop into the driver's seat, and let's speed off down the road.
Throw it into and on first gear.
I will.
Who wants to throw it into first gear with?
We've spent too long in the land of metaphor, so let's talk about the specifics of why I am pretty much ambivalent towards Driving Miss Daisy. So I fell asleep watching this movie with these 2 boys the other night, which was only partially, frankly, a commentary on the quality of the film. I was quite tired, but I think even if I was fully awake and fully immersed in the experience, opposed to split into 2, I'd probably be just as indifferent because I don't think Driving Miss Daisy does anything poorly. I actually think it's very well acted, and I think it's got a kickin' score. It's kind of it makes sense. So this is one of the films I think we're going to talk about wherein its win makes sense. However, when you begin to contextualize the year of this film's release, and you started telling me about Do the Right Thing, an all-time classic. You started telling me about The Last Crusade, an all-time classic. You started to talk about all these other films, like The Batman. I love 1989's Batman. But the other films of real repute beyond just cultural significance from that year, it becomes harder and harder to justify in my own mind this as the Best Picture winner, although it's sort of just, for me, a reaffirmation of why the Oscars really are not always a sort of ceremony of quality, but a ceremony of politicking. Because I don't think this movie is exceptional, but I don't think it's poor either.
Yeah, I think this
Yeah.
is one of the more okay, I was gonna say one of the more interesting entries in the Best Picture lineup, but the exact opposite of that is true. This is one of the least interesting entries in the Best Picture lineup because it's not a bad movie. I think it's a perfectly competent drama, but I also don't think this movie would matter very much if it didn't win Best Picture. And so, as a Best Picture winner, it has very little going for it. As a movie, I enjoyed this film. I have a good time with it. I like the characters. I like the tone and especially the score, as he said, probably one of my favorite film scores of all time. But I'm actually very curious, Tanner, if you have the wins and noms to get those out early because I just want to know, like, set the stage of what this was considered for back in its time.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, well, if Timo and I want to do our opening
Okay.
thoughts, I
Well,
can hit us with the wins and noms as a conversation starter.
Sure.
okay. Yeah. Well, I guess since Tanner, you're gonna roll into the wins and noms after your thoughts are over. I'll go with mine. I kind of echo Abram. I think I was entertained enough while watching the film. It didn't drive me to look at my phone or to think about anything else while I was watching it. But it's kind of bland. I think that like it doesn't have a whole lot in it that makes me think or that makes me even think in terms of what's going on in the story. The narrative moving from one little piece to another and these little
Yeah.
vignettes across a long time was like okay, but to me the film lacked conflict and it lacked stakes because it just decided not to really deal with anything. It kind of set up some hints of racism, but it just decides not to think or to do anything about those. So you know I guess that's a negative towards the film, and it makes it just a little bit like okay, I'm watching this nice story unfold, but beyond that there really isn't much there. I think the score, yeah, it's okay. I think not my favorite Hans Zimmer score out there,
Yeah,
but
I mean,
it
I
works.
feel like this is just gonna be me coalescing what everyone else has said here. It does lack really like conflict and stakes in a general like as we understand film sense, and it is just more of like a this like sassy little relationship between this old woman and her like chauffeur essentially, and it is backgrounded by the tumultuous racial change in the South of the 1950s and 60s. But ultimately, this film doesn't do a whole lot with that. Like literally, the last, or not even the last. There is maybe 15-20 minutes of this that takes up like the late 60s when this was all coming to a head, and it goes absolutely nowhere. I said for the racial overtones of the film. But at the same time, I chuckled a few times, which I think this is an entertaining film to a certain extent, and I'll look back and fondly remember those the little jabs, the little snipes between Morgan Freeman and Jessica Tandy. But ultimately, I'm not going to look back at this and think, oh, what an influential or what a game changing Best Picture winner. What a real what a interesting pick for the Academy at this time.
Nope.
Absolutely not. But let's see. But the Academy obviously did think it was an interesting pick. It did obviously give it the Best Picture Oscar, as well as Best Actress to Jessica Tandy. It also won Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Makeup as well. It was nominated. Morgan Freeman was nominated for Best Lead Actor. Dan Aykroyd was nominated for Best Supporting Actor. It was also nominated for set decoration, costume design, and film editing.
Yeah. Well, that's a lot of stuff, but
Yeah,
not nothing
Yeah,
I would
yeah,
say
that's a
like
lot of
super
nominees.
sticks out to me other than the performances personally.
yeah. I would actually say,
Yeah, I
I
would
want to talk
agree on
about
that.
the editing of this film a little bit because this film does take place over. I don't even know how many years this film takes place over because it jumps around a lot. I think so, which is maybe why I wouldn't. I think if you're gonna have this like multi, years, decades expanding sort of narrative, I want a bit of scale, especially when you're exploring a time period that was as important for race relations as the 1950s and 60s. So I never knew like, okay, has it been 3 months between these two scenes, or has it been 3 years between these two scenes? And I never really got a sense of that at all because the only real scale I had was, man, Dan Aykroyd seems to be aging quite a bit whenever he pops up every every 15, 20 minutes or so. So yeah, I think that the editing lacks that sense of time. I think this film explores a lot of time, but I never get a sense of it because I feel like in this is a character writing thing as well. I don't know how much the relationship changes between our two characters, really. But I'll throw
Yeah,
it to you guys for your thoughts.
here's what I
Yeah.
think. I think you raise a good point about the editing. It sort of feels like we're meandering at a certain extent, but I think it also comes back to the character writing, sort of the overall positioning of the film, right? Obviously, being about social justice in this era, it chooses to tell a narrative of racism on an individual level opposed to a systemic level. And sort of the film kind of in a moment explains what it's about when we go to the Martin Luther King dinner, and we leave and we listen to him speak, and it's like what's going to be remembered is the ambivalence of the good people, right? And so the reason I bring this up is because I think that there should be this sense between our two leads that what's the older woman's name in the film? I don't
Daisy.
remember. Miss Daisy.
Yeah.
Where Miss Daisy should have to sort of look within herself and reconcile her mistakes, and there should be a sort of, if we're going to come out the other side with this sort of strengthened bond, there should be more tumult on our way there, a sort of a sense of accountability that is developed within the characters. But there really isn't anything like that. I think, Timo, you're the one who's making the point where it's sort of gestural in its sort of discussion of, of these relationships and these racial tensions and conflicts, but it never wants to have those inform how the characters really interact. It is all filtered through these eyes of Miss Daisy. It's like, I'm not prejudiced. I'm not prejudiced. No, nothing's going wrong here. It feels like the filmmaking is kind of perpetuating that, and we end up having a film that might be the editing or it might be the writing, but leads to nothing feeling like it's going anywhere. There's really nothing to glean from this film other than what Martin Luther King Jr. said astutely beforehand, and they superimpose into the film.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the lack of that momentum is a huge detriment. I don't think, again, I don't think this movie is bad, and I think it's very simple in what it does. But I think that simplicity feels very lacking for a Best Picture, because not only do we not have a lot of truthiness in terms of the themes that it's digging into and exploring the race relations around the country, which obviously, has been said here, could have been very interesting for what this movie could have tackled, or even if not that, having this impact these two characters in a more aggressive way. Because I think the lack of conflict isn't even just on there's not like a huge bout of racism in this town, or something on a larger scale, or they end up at some sort of riot or something that is caused by this tension this time. We don't even really get a lot of interpersonal conflict in this film. And frankly, I found multiple points throughout the film, and I think this is probably my biggest knock against the film, where they set up something for conflict and then just let it peter off, or said, nah, that's okay, and wiped it away. One big example of that for me is when Morgan Freeman's character Hoke is indirectly asking for a raise from Dan Aykroyd's character. He's like, I think $65 sounds good. He's like, $75. I prefer that. And there's like some tension in Dan Aykroyd's like eyes and his look at Hoke, and he's like, this guy's trying to maybe kind of swindle me. And he's like, but then he's like, no, actually, 75 sounds good. They shake hands and they part. And that's like a scene that feels like it should have been leading to something. There should have come to a head. Dan Aykroyd's character I believe his name is Booley. Booley should have held that against Hoke for like another scene and then talked about it. And then maybe Miss Daisy's told, no, actually, you should give him a raise or something like that. Like, there's no momentum to these character relationships, because when conflict feels like it's about to happen, they either wipe it away within that scene or do a time skip, indiscriminate time skip of how long it's going to be, to where whatever that problem was, it's not a problem anymore because it's been 5 years. And how the hell is it going to stay a problem for 5 years? So that's something that I really do think this movie is poor at.
Yeah.
Bombing of the temple is another great example.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you mentioned...
And them getting pulled over by the police and being questioned It goes absolutely nowhere. Like,
Yeah, it
oh,
goes
actually, you're
nowhere.
good. Have a nice day.
With the
What?
cop from or with the coach from The Blind Side, by the way. I was surprised to see him there. I didn't know he was that old, but it was interesting to see him as the cop with like he's a skinny guy with the big nose and like the small chin or whatever. It's just fun to see him.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Skinny guy with the big nose and the small chin. What I was gonna say earlier was that, Tucker, I think you're right. That not only does the conflict kind of peters out, but it doesn't ever. The conflict is never the same. There aren't any ever like reoccurring conflicts between characters. They just like each time they have some other little minor difference that they either got to work out or just kind of be like,
Yep.
oh well, that's you're like that, and then not actually. There's no
Sure.
follow through from one vignette to the next about like developing this relationship. And
Mhm.
I forget who said it. I think it was Tanner that it they don't. I do agree. The characters don't feel like they change very much. I don't really think like Miss Daisy has like a strong dislike for having Hoke around at the beginning. And so then to go from not really from being sort of ambivalent, don't touch my stuff or whatever at the beginning to being like, okay, you're good friends with me, and isn't I don't know. I just feel like it isn't that big of a change for the characters, and I don't think Hoke is
Mm.
allowed to change very much at all. I think
Yeah,
he is pretty much
absolutely.
the same character the entire film. Um, and everybody's got room for growth, so why didn't
Yeah,
he
oh,
change?
sorry. Go
I
ahead,
don't know.
Abram.
Well, what I think it comes down to on like a most base level is that the intent of this film is that you end up like feeling good, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And the film is very deliberate to make sure
Mhm.
you aren't feeling bad for too long ever. I think that's where this sort of episodic nature ends up hurting the most because
Driving
there's
Miss
this sort of
Daisy
sense
limited
of
series coming to HBO Max next year.
No, no, no,
there's this
no.
sort of sense of, oh, the temple's been bombed. Times passes, but I don't feel like I need to be carrying that baggage forward because as you say, Timo, nothing ever really accumulates. And so as a result, I don't think if it's not going to challenge me on its source material, what's really the point? Because the film is about American racism in this period
Mhm.
and this sort of white upper middle class resistance towards that change.
Don't call her rich
But
though.
that's a don't
No,
call
she's
it. Well,
not
that's
rich.
another interesting thing. It's like the film doesn't want you to ever hate anybody.
Yeah.
Really, it doesn't feel that way to me, and I think that is a sort of root level cause of why characters aren't changing because that change is going to
Hmm.
require facing some of these prejudices that the film reiterates that our
Requiring
characters
stronger
don't have.
flaws to
Right?
overcome to show
Yeah.
growth.
Yes,
What's
more stakes, stronger flaws. We don't have them.
what's interesting about this is that especially in like even like a toothless like racism movie nowadays, you would have the stand-in racist villain, like the guy who or the villain of the film who is the guy perpetrating the hate. He is the one embodying the hate of the time essentially. Um, and I think that's not here at all. Like they mention like the governor or the mayor or whatever offhandedly, but we never get any character like that, which is just interesting me as a way to again skirt that sort of skirt that sort of conflict, I guess.
Well, I think sorry, Timo, but
Yeah,
I think
and
to that point
go
exactly.
ahead, Abram.
That is where the moment I think had an opportunity to be subversive and kind of break away and be more poignant
Mhm.
and timeless in a way that maybe the gentleman's agreement was when we talked about it before. Because it returns that Martin Luther King quote of it's the good people's ambivalence.
Mhm.
Because there's that really interesting scene before we go to the Martin Luther King dinner when Booley is explaining that
What
Booley
I
is
was
going
gonna
to
talk
explain like
about.
because of X and Y and Z, I'm going to look bad if I go, right? To me, that's the villainous core of the
Mhm.
film. But you gotta expose that core, and the film doesn't want to do that in any way other than a circumspect manner.
Well, yeah. Well, yeah, I just want to say,
And that
Yeah.
only comes up like once. It's only it doesn't show up in the film very much. Like the film is because it's this interpersonal relationship that feels kind of the same the whole time. It's like this sort of playful antagonism that goes to friendship, I guess. But like it doesn't allow the racism and the negative ambivalence from the white characters to like affect that, like we said, in any regard. And so when we do have these moments of, I guess, what the film is trying to be social message wise, it is just like it feels like it's like plopped in there here and there because the main story just is utterly lacking that, even though the context is all there and that the characters are all there for it to be a part of the story. It just isn't when it could be. And so then when it is, it's just it feels out of place, even though it should be far more in place. It feels a little strange to have these little bits being included with Martin Luther King when the vast majority of film just wants to
Yeah.
ignore that is a thing that is happening in this time period, even though it's like kind of written itself into a corner.
Yeah.
So it just avoids it, which is I don't think
And
is a
again,
smart way to
going
deal
back
with
to my
it at
previous
all.
statement, I'm not advocating that like, oh, this movie should have had a racist white guy be the villain of the movie or whatever. But it's to Abrams' point of like, if you don't have that, you got to fill in the conflict in other ways. You got to fill it in with the really building up the harmfulness of the ambivalence of our white characters and stuff like that, or the prejudices that Miss Daisy holds. But I think Tucker said this is that this film isn't really interested in exploring any conflicts like that. Like an easy one would have been with the police. Like they call Hoke the N word or once he drives away, but that seems
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess what I'm really saying here is just a doubling back on this theme of like or this complaint of like it doesn't do anything with the conflicts that it even attempts to set up. Like yeah.
I mean, it's also just amplified tenfold by Do the Right Thing coming out this year.
Yeah.
And not winning. I mean, ultimately, that's what it comes down to. Frankly, this film is interesting, or, well, quote unquote, should be interesting, and what's worth discussing is its thematic social material, and it's done 10 times better in Do the Right Thing in a film that is not only stronger in its messaging, but also much more interesting narratively. I think the reason that we're hammering home this sort of discussion, not only because I think that's the most germane part of the film to discuss, but also because what are we really going to say otherwise? You know what I mean? Like, what am I supposed to do? Sit here and say, oh, I felt the tension when we thought Hoke stole the can of salmon? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, what more does this film even offer on the A plot other than just this feeling of like, okay, it's a little story between these two characters. Again, well acted, I think well shot, I think sounds nice, but this is Quest for the Bestest, right? They should have been thinking about that. They should have been considering our review and realizing
Great
I
point.
agree.
the best picture winners operate on multiple levels. But it's like it's so easy to knock all these pegs out to where what are we just circling the drain of this movie's fine for the
Mhm.
next 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, here is one thing I want to throw in. I don't think there
What?
are people there, and I know one of them. He was my dad who don't like
Sure.
conflict in
Yeah.
movies and stuff, and
Sure.
want to watch it for the escapist like nicety value, and that where it doesn't have these elements that are like you have to be like, I don't, the characters are gonna die, and oh my god, are they gonna is Miss Davy gonna kick out Hope from being her driver? Like this film doesn't, because it doesn't present any of that. It has this like largely conflict free narrative wherein the conflicts are so small, and for some people,
Yeah.
I don't think that's me, and I don't think that's any of you guys. That is an appealing.
This isn't the right
factor in
narrative
film,
to have
but-
a no conflict storyline, though.
Exactly. That's the issue.
Yes,
You're right.
You're
You're
right.
right. I'm
Mhm.
just pointing out that this is a thing that
Well,
some people
Yeah.
want.
here's the thing.
In
You
their,
you
in
say
their
that,
films and
Abram,
books
but
and TV
I
and whatever.
don't know if I mean, I agree with you personally, but just being devil's advocate here for Driving Miss Daisy, I do think it's fine that not as a Best Picture winner, but fine as a film that this movie tackles very indirectly in the most circumspect way racism in this time period and interpersonal racism, but that instead focuses on the positive aspect of this relationship, because I do think that the bond between Hoke and Miss Daisy is reasonably compelling. I mean, it doesn't have a ton of depth, but I do think that when you're seeing Hoke support her as they're both coming to the ends of their lives, and Miss Daisy has this moment saying, Hoke, you're my only friend, like, these are good moments between these characters, and I do think that they certainly would have hit stronger if they had conflict and had to come together for a very specific reason other than, boy, they sure have spent a lot of time together. I mean, I think that's the moral of this story is if you spend 40 years with someone, they're going to maybe be your friend on the other side, even if you're kind of a dick to them. But I do feel like the value of this film of showing that these two characters from very different worlds, and each interesting in their own ways in terms of Hoke's undying positivity and hope that he can get through to Miss Daisy, and Miss Daisy's like over the top crabbiness and ambivalence to everyone, even her own son. Like, these are interesting characters, and I do like watching their bond. I'm always scraping for there to be more to that bond, to be a reason why I should be even more compelled by this bond. But I do think that as it stands, uh, showing that these two characters can come together from different worlds, from different social standings of different races, and be friends in the end, I think that's perfectly solid for a film to be portrayed.
Yeah. I did have a note about the friendship and the bond that is formed because, like I said, I think that Tandy and Freeman have very good chemistry in this film. They have very good comedic timing with one another. So I will applaud this film on that front. But if we're talking about the friendship itself, the building of friendship as a theme, as a crux of this movie, I have to take I take issue a little bit there too because I don't think this movie really depicts any uh endearing connection throughout. I think there's a lot of snarkiness, there's a lot of passive aggressiveness, there's a lot of misunderstanding that results in some wacky scenarios or like shallow conflict, I guess. Um, but I think it does lack for a majority of its runtime depicting the good, solid basis that this friendship is built on. What is the basis of the friendship? Where is the bedrock? That's what I'm looking for here. And it could have been in the racial turmoil of the time. It could have been anything else, really. They could have bonded over anything, but I don't think they have any real, true bonding moments at a given time. Like, I mean, you can draw like when Daisy is afraid when Hoke goes to pee in the middle of the night or whatever. But like that is a moment of her showing weakness, and he comes back and he's like, "Are you okay?" And then the scene cuts. Like they don't have a conversation. There's no larger character building outside of that. We're on to a different scene, and that happens a couple other times, like with the synagogue or whatever. He's like, "Hey, let me tell you about this experience that I had when I was younger." But again, and that's a solid scene. It would be a solid basis, but it comes so late in the game in the film. And then this film tries to have its cake and eat it too, where just
Have
minutes
its
after
pie.
that,
Need to.
have its pie. Thank you. Have its pie and eat it too. Where just minutes after that, they're saying like Daisy is saying like, "We're friends. You're my friend, Hoke." Yada yada yada. And then it tries to have all this emotional payoff that it didn't earn with the scene where it's like the snowstorm in Georgia when she's a really old lady and Hoke brings her. He brings her something like supplies or whatever, and it tries to have that emotional connection at the climax of the film without laying the groundwork first.
Yeah, I think, this film reminds me of Thor: Love and Thunder in one critical respect. And that's that I think they both should have cleared 2 hours because their relationships would have benefited a lot from more runtime. I'm going to stop making that comparison because it wasn't as funny as I thought it was going to be. But here's how I feel about the relationship because I think you're both right. Tucker, I think there are really great moments sprinkled throughout here. Tanner, I think the ones you mentioned are great. I also really like when they go to see Daisy in the old folks' home, and she's given bully shit, and she wants to have that moment with Hoke. I like that. I think that's all good. I think it hits like the highest level notes to allow us to intuit the way that the relationship develops. And I think it is to those moments that you mentioned, Tanner. But I agree with you in the sense that it's not enough. And it makes me wonder why the film is so short. Because even if there was 10 more minutes of screen time divided across 3 scenes that showed them bonding, more so than giving Hope the grammar book and a little payoff for that, or X or Y, letting us really see just 2 or 3 undistilled moments of them actually bonding, or facing adversity together in a more direct way, opposed to them just happenstance being in a similar spatially in the same bit of adversity. Like there would have been a stronger sense by the time the film closes that they built a relationship, but instead I'm looking at these little data points and trying to draw a line of best fit to show there probably is a relationship here, which is just not right.
Yeah,
And
because
it makes it weird that it's 90 minutes.
you don't go visit someone at the end of their life and feed them pie in like a very close bond way unless you had a bond, but we didn't really see that bond. I
Right.
think that's the intuit part, but no, I definitely agree that it's missing those teeth for that. I think that those scenes that I'm mentioning are good in vacuums, but they do need something else. They need something to support these, and I also think that I would have wanted there to be even if it's just on a personal level, something to connect them a little bit stronger than just that he's her driver and that's the scenarios that they're together with each other in most sequences and probably most of their interactions across their life. Like I like the idea that Hoke didn't know how to read and Daisy as an ex teacher at this point was very good at that and could have helped him along. But then where's the scene of her teaching him how to write other than going r, like that's
Yeah,
not
like
helpful.
condescendingly as well. Yeah, like super
It's
condescendingly.
kind of as it's like teaching someone at this reading comprehension level, like that's how you would do it. And she is a teacher. She's also an old lady. She's kind of a dick. I understand
Yeah,
that for that sequence, but I would have wanted that even if it's just that plot line. And that plot line, not that deep. It connects them on a different level to where we can see her watch Hoke grow, and maybe they have a little bit of a struggle over that, but that plot line obviously goes nowhere, and that's kind of similar to almost everything we've been mentioning here.
yeah,
It's almost like the film lacks connective tissue. We've got all these little elements, all these vignettes and small scenes, but like they just don't, besides our characters being in all of them, they don't flow together a huge amount. And the even I don't know, I'm just like there isn't any there there's nothing that stretches the whole length of the film really that is like a
yeah,
thing that matters the whole time. And so that just makes it a difficult narrative to be really compelled about or to really provide me with much to think about even really. I just am like I'm like, yeah, okay, all these things happened and some of them had
yeah.
consequence, but
I do
most of
have
them didn't.
some. Oh, I
And like it relationships
yeah.
wise
I
and
have
conflict wise, I should add.
some
So
Jessica
sorry, go ahead.
Tandy
Sorry.
trivia related to this film, if you'd like to hear it. I'll just roll right into this. Surprise, surprise! Jessica Tandy really old when she won this Oscar. She was 81 when she won Best Actress. Remains to be the oldest actress to win the award. She was the oldest ever to win an acting award until little Christopher Plummer beat her out in 2012 at the age of 82. He was the
Ooh.
oldest to win an Oscar ever until the original author of Call Me by Your Name won at the age of 89. So there's
Ooh.
that. She also Jessica Tandy also made $100 bet with her agent that she wouldn't win the Oscar on Oscar night. She said that this was the best bet that she had ever lost, which is a fun little piece of trivia. And if you can believe it, every famous actress and their dog was considered for the role of Miss Daisy at the time. I just have a couple names here that were considered for the role. Let me know if any of these any of these are standout people in Hollywood from the era. Katharine Hepburn, Betty Davis, Lucille Ball, Lauren Bacall, Angela Lansbury. There was also a duo that they nearly went with of Bette Midler and Eddie Murphy.
Hmm. Very different movie,
Yes, yeah, I agree.
Hmm.
especially for the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah,
Now I like Morgan Freeman as Hoke. I think he is quite good in playing just th- he's kind of bland, but he's a nice guy. He laughs at the moments that are awkward and makes everyone feel a little bit more comfortable in them. And he is a driver, and he likes to do his job. And he takes the verbal abuse he receives with a smile and a chuckle. And as a character, whatever. But I think the acting that Morgan Freeman puts into Hoke as a character is quite good. And he's very believable. And Morgan Freeman is a fairly recognizable face and a recognizable actor. But I get lost in his performance. Definitely, I know those kind of extra layers fade away, and I do feel like I am just looking at this man instead of it's Morgan
Yeah, I think
Freeman
the
being in
acting really
driving.
does a lot for this film. It makes surface level scenes feel a bit more immersive just because I think both of our leads are very believable.
Yes.
They just give such heartfelt performances that it really does. It doesn't save the film for me by any stretch, but it makes it as good as it is. I think both their performances are quite good.
I think that Hoke's performance, or excuse me, Morgan Freeman's performance as Hoke in this film is the thing that grounds me most, because how you're saying believable, and I think that him just being a very human guy, and not like the ways he responds to things and reacts to things in any dialogue sequence that he's in, just don't even feel like scripts. Like it feels like he's just like, oh hey, oh I've got the story to tell. Oh wait, why'd you say that? Hey, that's a little bit weird. He's using these turns of phrase that you don't usually hear from characters, and he's using words like yonder and stuff like that. Of
Mhm.
course, slang from the South in this time period, but it makes him feel very realized, even if he isn't a very complex character. I think you can, and this requires a little bit of reading into the dialogue and what we know of his history and stuff. I do think that Hoke as a person in this world is a very realized character. It's just hard to gather that from what we're given across the course of the film, because as we've said, he especially does not have a character arc. Of course, Miss Daisy learns to maybe not be a dick to the one person who shows her some care, but he doesn't. But he's a lot more believable as a human being than she is.
Yeah, I like Morgan Freeman as well. I think he's good in this. I would venture to say maybe better than Jessica Tandy, just
Yeah,
because I think he feels more at home doing the shtick, and it's easier for him. Jessica Tandy is the comedic straight man of this dynamic, and he's being the old homesy Southern guy with he's got these mannerisms and he's got these sayings, and he's putting up this with this curmudgeony old woman and stuff like that who is always looking for something to be wrong and who's always looking for a reason to hate him and stuff like that. And he is the more relatable one in that sense. He is the character for the audience to relate to, being like, yeah, this old lady is crazy and mean, and he does a great job, being that stand-in, and by just being so lovable and affable as Morgan Freeman, but also embodying this character of Hoke, who has dealt with this for 50 plus years of his life. He's grown up in the Jim Crow South,
yeah,
and he's grown accustomed to this very hateful world, and he's adapted to it by just being like a really nice and genuine guy who's always trying to endear himself to everyone that he meets. And but he still knows how to finagle his way, pull the strings a little bit, like in the scene with Dan Aykroyd when he's negotiating his salary or whatever, and he essentially lies that he was going to be like job poached by this other person, and Dan Aykroyd recognizes that, but he's like, he's a nice guy. I'll let him get away with it. Why not?
hmm
And he pulls the same stuff with Daisy as well. A little bait and switch, little manipulation of social circumstances with his building up that foundation of him just being a nice and happy and genuine guy. I think Morgan Freeman is like one of the best actors for that, because he is just one of these like just nice and quaint and happy guys. You always get a good feeling when you're watching a Morgan Freeman movie. Of course, except of course like Seven and stuff like that.
I'm always happy during that movie.
Yeah, for sure. I do have some other. I have some tertiary notes if we're winding down here. I don't think the lighting in this movie is very good. There's like a weird haze over everything, which I assume is maybe them trying to do this like 1950s. Boy, howdy, it's sure hot here in the heart of Georgia. Look at this yellow haze over everything. But I think it's really bad during night scenes. The lighting is quite bad there. So that's just a little nitpick that I had. Is like, this movie doesn't really strike me as very visually good. But at the same
Uh,
time,
It's got that 80s, it has that, like, 80s
yeah,
warm glow look to it, which is, like, a specific, visual style, um, and we've moved away from that since then. I yeah, to me, it's not like it's bad lighting, it's just, like, a choice to have it look like that, and, like, I think I mean, yeah, the night times is a little, but, like,
yeah,
most of it, I'm okay with it. I'm okay with the lighting. It looks like that,
sure,
and it's
yeah,
consistent like
yeah,
that. It
The
doesn't
the
stuff doesn't
lighting
make
for me
0
and just the
sense.
overall visual styling of this film, I actually think is good, like, because I think it works very well for the tone that the film is going for. It is very soft. You mentioned that glow, Timo. I think that's the word that ultimately pervades all of the visual styling of this movie in terms of how soft like the filter is over the camera, and how much bloom there is on absolutely everything. Every source of light and every reflection of a source of light is just going into your eyes, but I think that gives it like a sparkly, nostalgic feel. That is obviously what they're going for, because they're just trying to make it be soft and consumable, because that's the kind of drama this movie is going for. So I think it works very well, and it's distinct. Like we have seen a number of best pictures from this era, and I think maybe something like Ordinary People or Out of Africa might also sort of adopt this style in a lighter way. But because they lean so heavily into it, and that makes it so distinct, I'm like, yeah, actually, I appreciate that it looks so different.
Yeah, fair. At the same time, though, I do like some visual choices that the film makes. Like, I think there's a mirror shot towards the end of the film that is really cool. With films usually do a mirror shot where they hold on it for a second, and it's like, aha, you thought you were looking at the actual people, but actually this was a mirror. But this film does that, but then it holds on it, and Morgan Freeman is like pop. It's like one of those like ones that's in a desk that has like the mirror in front of you, and then the two mirrors that are kind of like angled towards you. So he's like in the big mirror on the front, but then he'll like walk a little bit and he'll be reflected off of one angled one into the other one. It's a really cool like way to set up that scene, and the camera holds on it, and it's very well choreographed as well, obviously. So, what else do I have? Oh, the theme. I mean, someone mentioned that at the beginning, but I think we can all agree that Hans Zimmer put his whole Zimussy into this one. It is a great score that we've got here for this film. The thoughts?
I already said that I love this score. I agree, though. I think if I had to describe sort of the aesthetic and the ambiance of this film, I'd just say it's pleasant.
Yeah.
I don't really think a whole hell of a lot about shot composition beyond that mirror shot. I don't think a whole hell of a lot about the lighting beyond its ability to let me see the foreground and the background in a deliberate manner. I mean, ultimately, it doesn't impress me, but it doesn't unimpress me. It's fine. I think it's very much characteristic of my thoughts on the film as a whole. But the score is great.
Yes.
Score's a little
Good.
loud for my tastes. It's a little like very present in the mix of the film. We don't really get to hear a whole lot of other stuff. I think that like sometimes you can just swamp a movie, you can swamp a film with sound, with music, to make it easier to not do as much work with the other sound design aspects. And perhaps that's what they were doing with this one. It is a little older, so stuff, the like technology and style of how you do sound design has changed since then, and so I mean, I don't know. The music is like,
Damn.
I don't really like it that much.
Well,
I think it's a little heavy-handed.
I had to double check this, but looking back, the Academy didn't either. This didn't even get nominated.
That's terrible.
Which is nuts.
Frankly.
Yeah, which is insane.
Travesty.
And just a quick note, quick bit of trivia on that score. Hans Zimmer's score was completely done with synthesizers, all of which he played. There was no orchestra. This score is 100% Hans Zimmer.
Wow. One-man band.
Yeah, exactly.
Whoa.
And no nomination. Okay. What were you thinking, Academy? Quite frankly. Yeah.
Wow, come on. What was going on?
That's all the thoughts I have on Driving Miss Daisy.
Yeah, pretty much mine too. Should we give
it a score? I see. All right.
Head of the game.
Abram is ahead of us.
Okay.
What do I give this film?
Okay, I got mine.
I just think it's worth reiterating once more all of the other films that came out this year. Just do a little exercise. You do a little research. If you made it to this video, you can make it to Google. Just type in 1989 films, and you'll be like, "What? Huh?
Oh, what?" Yes.
This beat The Burbs and Jason Takes Manhattan.
I got mine ready.
So true. So true.
All right, let's find out where this goes on our list in 3, 2, 1. Okay, there we go. We've got a score. It is a 5.7. So we've got a little bit of tie breaking to do. But before we do any of that, the point breakdown starting at the top. Tucker gave it a 6.4, Tanner a 6.3, I gave it a 5.2, and Abram put in 4.8. So a little bit of a spread there. Not a full 2 points, but close. Okay, 5.7. We've got to decide between two films. This one, Driving Miss Daisy, versus Out of Africa versus Patton. So
Out of Africa is low. Yeah, that's lower.
We start at the bottom normally.
I would put this above Out of Africa.
I also would.
Yeah, same here. Yes.
True.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
me
tell you
too,
what
because it's
happened
not
in
as
it.
boring.
It
Mhm.
definitely is.
And it's shorter. It's shorter, too. Gets merits
Patton?
for that. Versus Patton.
It's
Here's the thing. I think
close.
I feel like Patton frustrated me more because
Hmm.
I feel like it had more potential, but also it is a much more impressive film and one that makes a
Yeah.
lot more sense to win Best Picture. So while I prefer Driving Miss Daisy, maybe internally, I can't, in good conscience, put this over Patton.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's
The character
I don't
work
think I can
is,
put this
while
over
still an
Patton.
issue in Patton, if you go back and watch our review, I believe we noted on that. I think it's still stronger than Driving Miss Daisy, and like Tucker said, a more impressive win, a more sensical win than Driving Miss Daisy as well.
Yeah.
So
I
I would
have
also
them
go
apparently
under
within a
Patton.
10th, and I agree. Tanner, I think you're completely right. I think that they're both flawed in similar ways,
Yeah.
frankly. But when you're making a big World War II movie, well, you just kind of get inherent points. I mean, that's what we're
Mhm.
doing. We're comparing them on their merits, and I really think that the film doesn't stack up. There's no Driving Miss Daisy has no calling card. Patton at least has its spectacle.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think that's kind of
And
how I'm
George
going to
C.
remember
Scott.
Driving Miss Daisy.
I love
Sure.
Freeman and Tandy in this film, but I would take George C. Scott and Patton any day.
Yeah.
Okay. It
Yeah,
seems
that's
we're
the
all
first time that's
oh my
ever
God,
happened.
We just breezed our way through that tiebreaking. We all just were like, good points. Yes, I think we're all in agreement. So Patton is going to win out over Driving Miss Daisy, but that means that at number 60th, that's where we're putting Driving Miss Daisy above Out of Africa. So it's going to go 59 Patton, 60 Driving Miss
Yep.
Daisy, 61 Out of Africa. That's the way
That's
it
true.
all comes out in
If
the
and
wash,
if you
I
think,
guess.
yeah,
There we go.
if the
done it
audience
again.
thinks we're a bunch of doodles here for putting Driving Miss Daisy that low, they can let us know in the comments, I suppose.
Great reference.
Thank you. That's the one. Sometimes I write down lines that I really like in movies that I watch. That's the only one I wrote down was "You're a doodle, mama."
Good old Boo.
Bully.
Boo.
But well, the last thing I would say is that
All right, well-
did you guys know that Dan Aykroyd was in this picture?
I knew he was. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, all right.
Yeah, I knew he was. I read it out at the
I
beginning.
didn't
Wouldn't
get
have known if
to
you
say
hadn't
the
told me.
joke then, but I had to squeeze it into this video somehow.
All right.
I think so.
Should we
Yeah, I
spin that
suppose
wheel?
so.
Should we
I
spin
mean,
it?
what could
I've got it
possibly
ready
go
right here.
wrong?
It's pulled up.
We've done it for
We're gonna-
74 plus episodes now. I mean, there's no way we're going to be interrupted in any way. So I'll just warm up my pipes here and do a little sing a song. So
Sing us your song, Tanner.
Sing a
and it
Rooney,
would
sing
really
a-
just be a tragedy
sing a
if we got
Rooney
interrupted.
Ooney?
I will say. I'll just reiterate that one more time. But here we go.
Okay.
Wheel,
Oh my God,
what's
so
your
horrible.
deal? Give us a movie that
All
makes
right,
us
okay.
squeal.
I can't keep
what's
it.
going on here?
I can't keep it in anymore. Hold on, everyone. All right, now here's the thing.
Hey,
A while ago, a long time ago, we decided that we would be watching the longest and the shortest Best Picture winners back to even each other out, to give ourselves a little bit of reprieve from the longest and just to finally get the shortest out. So Gone with the Wind and Marty are paired together, and the four of us are going to be all in person over the course of the next week. So we might as well take advantage, say screw you to the wheel, put the hands on the wheel of our own destiny, and drive straight into Gone with the Wind and Marty, which we'll be reviewing together. Now, we haven't quite decided which one we're doing first, but one of those two will be the next episode, and then you will be able to know what comes right after that, because we'll be reviewing those two.
In
Wow.
2 separate episodes, though, to be clear.
Yes, this
Won't
isn't
even need to
one
hear us-
Really clear.
Marty
Yeah.
Cross Gone with the Wind
Gone
extravaganza.
with the Marty or something like that.
Yeah.
Marty with the wind.
Marty with the Wind. I like that one. Well, you can be sure that those are going to be fun episodes. We're all going to be hanging out, sitting together. In some situation, we haven't figured all that out. But you'll be in for a treat. I'm sure of it when you are watching us. You know, when Tucker says something that I really
Lean
don't
over
like,
and-
Grab me, you can
Lean
flick
over
me.
and just tickle him. Give him
I
a tickle.
Yeah, I just tickle him. Well, that's going to be fun. Thanks for talking about Driving Miss Daisy. You put some interesting thoughts into my head about the film, even though I did not come out of it with many. I've got more of them now. So hey, it was a positive experience in the end. Next week we're going to be talking about either Gone with the Wind or Marty, and until then, peace.